Hello there. The wine I'm looking at today is a wine from Spain, from a producer called Miguel Torres, and it's their Sangre de Toro. It's the 2020 vintage of that, and this is a DO wine from Catalunya. Now, Bodegas Torres is a huge family-owned Spanish winery. Their production is about 4 million cases of wine a year. And although they're not the largest, they're probably one of the best-known Spanish wine producers. Iconically, they were probably the first people to successfully produce Cabernet Sauvignon in Spain. Now, the company's history dates back to 1870, when somebody called Jaime Torres Vendrell set up the company, and the family had expanded the company to a fair size when, during the 1940s, the fact that France was unable to export its wines to most of the world due to its occupation by Germany during World War II, the company took advantage of this and grew substantially. The United States became a major market for Spanish wines, and the brand received a significant boost in 1979 when its 1970 Gran Coronas wine, made from company-owned vineyards in Penedès, won a blind tasting Olympics organised by critics Gault and Millau. The company has continued to prosper and is now run by fourth and fifth generation descendants of its founder. So, as I say, the company now sells millions of cases of wine, and this is up from a level where they were only selling hundreds of thousands of cases as recently as the mid-1990s. Today, the company exports to over 140 countries worldwide and makes wine in Spain's two principal DOCA zones, both Rioja and Priorat, as well as in multiple DO regions such as Penedès, Ribera del Duero, Catalunya and Rueda. Much of the company's success has been down to its three principal brands. The Coronas brand, a brand founded as far back as 1907, but boosted in 1970 by the launch of the premium Gran Coronas label. These are wines combining Tempranillo and Cabernet Sauvignon grown in Penedès. The second of these labels, Vina del Sol, was launched in 1947 and is a white wine made from Peralada and Garnacha Blanco. This is a brand that was revamped substantially in 1962 when cold fermentation was introduced. And finally, the third of the company's principal brands is Sangre de Toro, which was launched in 1954. The original, which is what I'm looking at here, is a blend of Garnacha and Carignana, so Grenache and Carignan. The name means bull's blood and was chosen by Miguel Torres Carbó, with the name being inspired by the Greek god Dionysus, who evidently is represented by the figure of the bull. Today, the brand also includes a Reserva. There's a rosé that's made from Tempranillo, Garnacha, Syrah and Carignana. Also a white made from Peralada and Garnacha Blanco. The company has also expanded outside Spain, looking for other opportunities. So in 1979, Miguel Torres Carbó, who was a fourth generation of his family working in the company, founded Bodegas Miguel Torres in Chile, and then in 1982, his daughter Marimar Torres established Marimar Estate in California. Most recently, Torres have ventured into China back in 1997, originally establishing a bottling and distribution plant for their brands from elsewhere, but they've now also planted vines and are working in a joint venture with a company that were their importer there, Summergate, to produce and distribute Chinese wines. Now, to talk quickly about the Catalunya DO, this stretches across the northeastern corner of Spain, between the Pyrenees Mountains and the more gently sloping land of the Mediterranean coast at the south. It's a large expanse and covers a diversity of landscapes, microclimates and soil types. This is a place where vineyards are both essential and inseparable elements of the region's culture and environment. Miguel Torres sourced grapes for this wine from a massive network of growers right the way across the entire Catalunya DO. Now, the 2020 vintage saw quite an early harvest due to climatic conditions. After a relatively dry winter, the growing season began with quite abundant spring rains. Milder temperatures caused significant outbreaks of downy mildew in certain locations, and the result of this was to reduce yields quite significantly. In spite of this, however, the harvest brought in healthy grapes. The summer was dry and it was warm, but there weren't excessive heat spikes. So the fruit that was harvested was both healthy and ripe. Now, as I say, the grape varieties used are Garnacha and Carignana. For this vintage, I can't find figures for the exact blend, but it tends to be the case that Grenache is the dominant grape variety, with normally somewhere in the region of 60 and 65% of Garnacha being blended with between 35 and 40% of Carignana. Picking was done by hand, probably in the first week of September. The vineyards chosen for Sangre de Toro are normally those with clay limestone soils. At the winery, I'm told that selection went on. I don't know quite how that was done, highly probably using an optical sorter to remove damaged or unripe grapes, maybe those that haven't coloured. Fermentation took place in temperature-controlled stainless steel tanks. Fermentation lasted a week. I'm told the wine stayed on its skins for a week, so quite a brief maceration there, looking more to take perfume and flavour out of the grapes than necessarily to take too much structure. The wine aged briefly in a combination of French and American oak barrels. Now, some of the notes I've seen for later vintages suggest that probably only 20% of the wine was aged in barrel. So certainly it seems likely that only a portion of the wine was barrel aged, and even then, just for a period of 6 months. So all we're getting is quite a gentle oak influence there, an approach that I'm assuming is meant to prioritise the fruit aromas. Ironically, for a wine labelled as bull's blood, the wine is certified as being vegan. Evidently, Torres as a company officially transitioned the brand to its vegan status in 2018, and certification is overseen by a company called a V-Label. And what this means as far as the winemaking is concerned, that when it comes to fining, there won't be any addition of animal proteins to help remove tannins from the wine. That will either be done by some sort of plant-based substance or possibly by a clay called bentonite. So let's take a look at the wine, shall we? Been sitting here and I can smell a beautiful sort of berry aroma. Not a massively strong aroma, but quite gentle, ripe, pure black and red fruits. So let's have a look at the colour first, shall we? The wine's core is a medium ruby colour. There's still a slight element of purple on the rim. Having said that, this is a 6-year-old wine, so it's getting a little mature now. The wine has 13.5% alcohol, and eventually the combination of the alcohol and the tannins giving it some body there is causing tears to fall down the sides of the glass. So let's take a closer look at the aroma, shall we? Gosh, there really is a very impressive, ripe berry perfume to the wine. The aromas are quite straightforward. There aren't any obvious notes of vanilla or cedar or anything like that. But you have a range of these juicy berry perfumes running from sort of raspberry, quite elegant lifted notes. There are notes of mulberry through red currant, through to more sort of blackcurrant cassis, like black fruit, almost a sort of an elderberry and blackberry note. There are really some quite hedgerow compote notes in there, perhaps with some slight hints of spice. That could be the fruit, or it could actually be a sort of slight oak influence, and perhaps some slightly meaty notes as well. So let's have a taste. There is this lovely, juicy, mouth-watering freshness. Starting off with red berries, again, that sort of raspberry. There's a slightly sort of confected, almost strawberry note. Again, mulberries, cherries, sort of juicy cherry notes, morello cherries. Coming through to rich, almost raspberry notes, maybe loganberry, blackberry, black cherry, juicy black cherry, quite ripe, very smooth, rounded. There's almost a sort of slight visceral nature to the juicy fruit. But the entire of that is surrounded by some slightly rustic, drying, maybe slightly earthy, maybe slightly spicy tannins, maybe just a little bit of oak influence there. The oak used is noted as being both French and American. American oak would tend to add more of a spicy nature. the wine is nicely balanced. There is a little tannic grip, but most of the mid-palate is soft, smooth, and pleasantly rounded. The alcohol is well in balance. It might just be giving a tiny little bit of warmth, which is seeing some spicy touches on the finish, but actually it's lasting quite well. There's a sort of a black fruit at the end of the finish that almost gives us sort of a slight licoricey hint, and even at the end of the wine, I'm still getting a lovely mouth-watering touch of freshness. I think the wine is drinking beautifully now, with balanced acidity and just enough grip. The drinking window I've seen suggested for the wine is that it should continue drinking through until 2029. That seems entirely reasonable. It doesn't seem to me to be starting to fade, but at the same time, there's not a huge structure to age for a long period. Looking at the Wine Search aggregated critic score, this vintage received 88 out of 100. I think that's a pretty fair score. I think possibly I would have marked this 89 myself. And I think also that score should be viewed in relation to its price. For that reason, I'll leave a link to the webpage on the Wine Searcher website for this wine, so you can see if it's available in your market and at what price. Certainly, I've been impressed by how approachable and how drinkable this is as a wine. I certainly feel there's a versatility in its style that would allow it to pair with a large number of quite robustly flavoured foods. So yes, I think this is a wine that's proved itself to me to be a versatile and good value brand. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, it would be great if you could press the like button. That would be fantastic. If you're watching these videos and you enjoyed them, do please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It would be great to have your support as a follower. If you have any friends you think might like to watch, it would be fantastic if you'd consider passing it on to them. I'd appreciate your endorsement in that way. So thank you once again for joining me, and I do hope that maybe you'll make some time in the near future and come and join me for another tasting. Till then, bye for now.